On today's episode of Phinside The NFL, I am joined by Tyler Dunne of Go Long TD, and we will discuss his latest article, which is David Long and the Beast Within. We will go over all the pain, all the trauma, all the death that surrounded David Long Jr. that he overcame to become one of the defensive leaders of the Miami Dolphins. Plus, we'll also talk about Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, contract situations for quarterbacks, and much, much more. Please do us a favor, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and as always, let's get into this.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field on the near side, that open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep! He's got it for the touchdown again! Let's go!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go! Fin Nation, what's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one, and today I'm joined by Tyler Dunne of GoLongTD.com. We had him on here when you did the Tua Time article, your latest article. We'll talk about it today, David Long and the Beast Within. But Tyler, how are you doing? And right before we went live, it clicked like a light bulb over my head. Dolphin fans will also know Tyler Dunne's work from basically revealing Sean McDermott and his, infamous Al-Qaeda speech now. So I know Dolphin fans absolutely love to meme the hell out of that one. So I want to thank you for not only taking the time out of your schedule to come on, Tyler, but also for giving us, memes that'll never die in the Dolphin community. Thank you very much, sir.
The memes ran rampant. They still do, I see. But yeah, that was when I was talking to players, to coaches, to scouts, everybody I possibly could for that 3-part series, the McDermott problem. GoLongTD.com, make a reference. Thanks a lot, Reason. That was definitely the one that had the jaw hit the floor. I mean, I was in my office where I'm sitting here now talking to a source who first told me about that speech, and I didn't believe him at first. I was like, wait a minute. So Sean is telling the players to maybe be like those passengers on the other flight that prevented an attack on 9/11, right? The one that movies were made of. And he said, oh, no, not that flight. He was telling the players to communicate and execute a plan like the 9/11 hijackers. And his point, that there was a larger point here. Obviously, he is not pro-terrorism or any of that. He just was overthinking it. I mean, that's been a problem for Sean McDermott in Buffalo, overthinking things to the point, to the extreme of thinking you can present this all to your team and say, look, if evil can do something like this, imagine we can do for good. But yeah, it did not hit. It was not received well by those in attendance, and he had to come out, apologize. And I mean, there was much more. It was 21,000 words. There was a lot more to that series, but that obviously is what's going to get shared and picked up and spread like wildfire that week.
Well, so as Tyler Dunne comes on the show and tries to shoot down suspicions that there may be a sleeper cell in Buffalo. But in terms of McDermott, you said something key there, though, like the overthinking, as Dolphin fans, we see the overthinking on the field with McDaniel, right? Like sometimes he gets in his own damn way, outthinking himself, thinking, okay, team's going to do this, I got to do this. And it ends up not working just because he, sometimes the simplicity of running the football inside of the red zone, but oh no, they think I'm going to run it, so let's pass. And, Dolphin fans are very, very frustrated with a coach that can outthink himself at times. But thank God we have a coach in Miami who doesn't take inspiration from Al Qaeda. That's all I gotta say.
I mean, yeah, I can't see Mike McDaniel. And that's the thing. I mean, Mike McDaniel connects with his players on such a real level, like human to human level. And I think Sean tries really hard. I think he has tried very hard. And hey, I'm open to the idea that he can evolve. I think he did. I think that last month of the season, that Miami game, with the division on the line, they're going for it on 4th and short. In instances that he wouldn't before, he's letting Josh be Josh. It's been such a problem here in Western New York, just trying to hold back your freak show of a quarterback. I mean, you give Mike McDaniel, Josh Allen, you give any of these offensive minds, Josh Allen. I don't think in the offseason they're saying, you got to slide more, you got to step out of bounds. So just let him create, let him be an artist, let him go. And he did do that the last month of the season, and they did get a big win in Miami, right? Like that was a signature win for the Bills, as his fans know. So let's see what happens, but it's all about the playoffs.
Listen,
not only the Bills, but for the Dolphins too, right? It's all about January for both of these teams.
Oh, yeah. Listen, I think Josh Allen had a better case to be MVP last year than Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson just had the most overrated MVP season we've ever seen. Didn't even throw for 4,000 yards, didn't throw for 30 touchdowns. I mean, last year really felt like we give the MVP to the team with the best record in the hardest conference, and it just so happened to be Lamar Jackson. I think you look at what Josh Allen did from being 3 games out to what you mentioned, coming in and beating us, winning the division, et cetera, et cetera. He combined for over 40 touchdowns, right, last year. I think Josh Allen had a better case for MVP last year than Lamar Jackson did, and that's coming from a Dolphin fan. So I could recognize and respect the ability. You know what I mean? I do think they might take a little bit of a step back this year, the Buffalo Bills. We look at that receiving core, like Keon Coleman. I think Curtis Samuel's a better number 2 than he is a 1. Maybe they try and make a move for a receiver, at the trade deadline or whatever. But like, I honestly think they're going to just target Dalton Kincaid a whole hell of a bunch this year. Yep. And I kind of think that's where our linebacker core comes in, because obviously the star of your piece, David Long back there, but also we added Jordan Brooks, Anthony Walker Jr., guys that can cover, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we're going to make life a little harder than it was last year. And let's be honest, if you did watch that game, the key turning moment at the end of that game, the pivotal moment that was kind of, the straw that broke the camel's back, was Chase Claypool, instead of running it out, decided to run a sideways horseshoe route. And, when you don't run the right routes in a timing-based offense and you let defenders beat you to the spot, that's, interceptions are going to happen. So anyways,
now he's a Buffalo Bill. We'll just have to call it the Chase Claypool Bowl when these two teams meet, right?
Bro, I remember a couple months ago, like during OTAs, Bills fans were hyping up the Claypool edition. Like, what do you think this guy is going to be? This guy was, 1 second away from going to the CFL. All right, and literally 1 second away from going to the CFL because he had offers from the CFL. So, but anyways, I mentioned a guy, David Long. There, you just came out with your latest article, David Long Jr., the Beast Within. First thing that jumps out to you when you read that article is, man, talk about a man who has been through a lot, shouldered a lot of pain through, death and just trauma from that death. But the way he's used it to shape himself into not only, like your article alludes to in the title, a beast on the football field, but also he's turning it into being like a leader for this Miami Dolphins defense. Couple things I wanted to talk about regarding it. And let's start, before we get into his history, let's start like before he came to Miami. I think, I got to say, when I read everything he went through, like when his brother Keith passed away, et cetera, and he went to Vrabel into his office crying. And then you fast forward to Vrabel throwing him under the bus. All right. Really throwing him under the bus in terms of soft tissue injuries. I remember all of us Dolphin fans, without even knowing the backstory you provided, kind of looked at that funny because we all knew how Mike Vrabel was relying on him to a certain extent. Can you talk about that part a little bit? You were sitting there talking about it. That's got to emotionally bug him that a guy who he leaned on personally as a coach kind of, do you think it was for financial reasons to try and get him at a cheaper cap hit? What do you think the motivation was there to kind of throw David under the bus? That was, I remember even as a Dolphin fan reading that and being like, that's kind of weird to throw at a player like that. But what were your thoughts?
Right. You never hear a coach besmirch, come close to criticizing a free agent to be. It's taboo. You just don't do it. I mean, these players are risking their brains, their bodies. They're putting everything on the line for you. And here's David Long. Here is a player who has sacrificed in every conceivable way for you on the field. And I think it must have been the season-ending press conference for Mike Vrabel that would have been 2022 season, to say that David Long Jr. is a quote-unquote repeat offender when it comes to the soft tissue injuries. Bizarre, and it pissed off David Long, rightfully so. I mean, you're a player that's, laying it all on the line for this team, let alone all of the other stuff that we're going to get into from, it really started at high school graduation. You lose a beloved aunt, like a second mother, somebody who really raised you that day, to the 3 cousins through college, rapid fire succession, a murder to murder to murder while your brothers are in jail for way too long, considering their crimes. And I dug into this a little bit. It was excessive, but Keith finally gets out. You're going to make up for lost times. You have 8 months, but it's during COVID. So you only see him 6 or 7 times, barely at all. And then he's killed. He meets 4 women at a gas station.
Senseless.
And it's unbelievable. Like, they bait him to an Applebee's, they get dinner, then they bait him back to an apartment, and he is shot dead by 2 men waiting right there. So David Long goes through all of this, and he's a hell of a player. What drew me down there, reason, is just watching him on film, point A to point B. This guy is ruthless, violent, everything we love about football. I figured there's a reason he plays the way he plays, and that was it. But so to go through all of that, and you get to free agency, your chance to get paid, and you hear that from your coach, hell yeah, I'd be pissed off if I'm David Long.
Do you think he stays in Miami? What was the vibe you got? Because I've heard rumblings privately this offseason that he's one of the players that they want to extend after they get Tua done. They want to get that extension done, before he hits the market next season, from the Dolphins side. What's the vibe you get from him? Is he happy? Because I know you wrote, and obviously he thought, he knew what he was worth. He wasn't too happy with that, I don't want to say too happy, but, he was a bit underwhelmed with what the free agent market was, shaping up for him. I don't want to even use the word reluctantly accepted, but he accepted the Miami Dolphins offer, even though he valued himself and thought he was worth much more than that. Did you get the vibe that he's happy in Miami? Do you get the vibe that could be a long-term relationship? Because, before he got here, we were relying on, and, he just left. Guys like Jerome Baker, we hadn't really had a good linebacking core since Kiko Alonso was around. And I feel like now with what we're building with David Long Jr., Jordan Brooks, and Anthony Walker, this is the best linebacking core we've had around since those Kiko Alonso days. What's the vibe you get? You think David Long sticks around?
I chuckle when you say Kiko Alonso because that name here in Buffalo, there's a jersey transaction that transpired, and I'll just leave it at that. I'm sure people can research what was the other side of that transaction. So it's a kind of an urban legend here. But anyways, I think that David Long Jr. loves it in Miami. I really do. This guy is somebody who has managed to harness all of the pain, all of the anger, all of that for good. It's been his blessing and his curse. All of this shit has just been happening to him. for the longest time. I mean, you can even take it back to childhood when he's 7 years old. He's on the back of a bike, on the mongoose pegs with his brother, gets absolutely drilled by a car. He flies over the windshield, crashes to the pavement. He's bleeding out in the street. He's not making this shit up. I mean, he showed me there's scars on his biceps, scars on his head. So you survive that. And then the very next year, the SWAT team breaks into your house. They take your brothers away.
Crazy story.
For aggravated robbery. Right. He doesn't know what's happened. He just hits the deck at 8 years old. And then you lose your aunt, and then a cousin, and another cousin, and another. It just built up this anger inside of David Long that he used for good. I mean, this is the sport of football, right? We love it because these are gladiators, that they're doing something that most of us can't even wrap our minds around. It's a car crash every play, 60, 70 car crashes a game, right? If you're a linebacker. And he's built for that world because of everything, because he has been able to just kind of funnel those emotions into the linebacker position. I mean, I talked to his defensive coordinator in college, his college roommate, his mom. They all say, like, he's got this look about him. Like Tony Gibson, his DC, said, if I held him out of a scrimmage,
they kept talking about his eyes.
Like the Undertaker. Like he wants to punch you. He'd hold him out of
his roommate. Remember, his roommate would talk, like, the stuff his roommate would say would be like, you could basically tell by the eyes where you're at with him. You know what I mean?
His roommate, his coach thought he was going to punch him just because he was holding him out of a practice. So it's a beautiful thing on a football field. Like, you need to find something to get you going in this profession, in this world. And I think he's had it, but there's been a downside. There's been a curse with that blessing. He just hasn't been a happy person. He's been a very angry person. He's felt survivor's guilt, right? These are kids he grew up with that are dying. I mean, these aren't just cousins. These are cousins that he grew up with every day, dying. And I think the turning point is when he becomes a Dolphin, like you put perfectly. He wasn't thrilled with that contract, but he liked the idea of going somewhere new and betting on himself with a 2-year deal. But I think it was that dinner, right around the time he signed that deal, he ate at Bad Bunny's Japanese steakhouse down there and Gecko. And he said he's eating this dinner, and for the first time ever, he didn't feel guilty. Like he felt good about eating there. And from that point forward, it's been attending the F1 race, going to Game 7, seeing the Florida Panthers. He's linking up with the artist down there, the graffiti artist. He's going to get his pilot's license. He's going to learn piano, golf, tennis.
Is his girlfriend?
I know they met on Instagram. I'm not sure exactly where she's from, but he's got a girlfriend now. I think things are getting serious.
I'm just hoping for our chances, because if she lives in South Florida, that gives us better chances of retaining him. That's all I'm asking that for.
My point is, I think he loves it down there. He's going to want to maximize his worth, but I think living in Miami has really made him a very, very happy person that has kind of managed to strike that balance that you need in life.
He's athletes first, right?
Yes. Yeah, David Mugoleta. Same agent as Tua, right? Same agency
as Christian Wilkins, and we know where Christian Wilkins is right now. Just saying. So same agency as Javon Holland too, who I believe is, who doesn't have a 5th-year option, so that'll get pretty. But with David Long, one of the interesting things in that article too is, sticking with a little bit of the Dolphins here. He seems excited to be working under Anthony Weaver, seemed not so excited about Vic Fangio's tenure in Miami. And that's kind of a recurring theme, because I don't know how much research or you've heard about the situation. Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard at one point in the season were going to him and saying, hey, listen, Eli Apple needs to come out. We got this young kid from South Carolina, Cam Smith. You need to play him. Fangio is basically saying, hey, I run the defense, not you, right? Yet early in the season, Howard had gone to, specifically with Diggs, had gone to Fangio and said, hey, listen, Kohu's getting cooked out here. You got to let me travel with Diggs. And Fangio again, Ramsey did. Now Jalen Ramsey comes after he comes back from injury, and he starts asking to shadow certain players. And then he got the same from Fangio. And I think that's where the issue really started, because they're all looking at Jalen Ramsey like, yeah, Jalen Ramsey ran in LA. They ran an iteration of your defense under Raheem Morris. And guess what? They won a Super Bowl. Okay, Fangio, how many Super Bowls do you have, Fangio? You know what I'm saying? I think that's when you start listening to your leaders. You were talking about a guy like Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel listens to his players. He's close to the players. So when his players start relaying that message to him, I don't think it's sat very well with Mike McDaniel. What was the vibe you got about his excitement to be working with Anthony Weaver and his lack of excitement from working with Vic Fangio?
Yeah, it was. He said plenty without needing to use many words. When we kind of got onto the topic of the DC change, and I asked him, guys didn't seem that upset when Vic left, and he just said, no. And as it was that the case, and he said, yeah. I don't think they liked the scheme that much.
Yeah.
Which is wild because, I mean, if I was wrong about Eddie, I was, you love to puff your chest out when you're right about something. Like Jordan Love, man, I believed in this guy from day one.
So did I.
Get right down to thinking the Bucks were going to be good last season. But I really thought Vic Fangio as this team's defensive coordinator was the missing piece. Now, hell, the Dolphins, the injuries that this group had was apocalyptic. And when you're basically looking for the senior citizens to rush the passer by season's end, I couldn't believe that Bruce Irvin was rushing the passer in that game, and Justin Houston, I believe, too.
Yeah.
So, but I hate blaming injuries. We're not going to sit here and talk about injuries. It didn't work out. Players weren't happy. And I'm shocked because Vic Fangio is the coach who laid out the blueprint for how you stop Sean McVay and those LA Rams. That's that Super Bowl year that Bill Belichick won it. I mean, he was the Bears DC. They shut him down in the regular season. Belichick takes that, puts his own tweaks to it, embarrasses one of the brightest offensive minds in football, and Sean McVay.
Yeah,
but I think it just goes to show you
Todd
Gurley couldn't do anything, right? His knees are arthritic, probably, but
just
shows you how much the game changes. It evolves year to year, and I don't know if he's been able to keep up with those changes. So to get a DC and Anthony Weaver who comes straight from a Ravens defense that was the best in the NFL in the regular season, at least. They did their part in the AFC Championship game. To get somebody who's going to bring that to Miami, and you've got the players, even with Christian Wilkins gone. I mean, this defense has the personnel to win. They're really excited. I think what has David Long particularly excited is he's going to be the one calling it. He has the green dot. He's going to be relaying all those play calls. He wants that responsibility on him. As he said, like, I want to be the reason that works or doesn't work. Said, I'm like the leader of the 300 Spartans. Like, let's go to war together. And it's all on me. He wants to take command. I think his frustration on an individual level was, especially the first month of the season, linebackers running in and out, couldn't really get into a rhythm. Sometimes it's best to just let your players play and lean on them instead of getting too cute schematically or, trying to outfox an offense.
Where do you see him as a leader? Do you think he's going to be the perfect fit? Because he never had these responsibilities in Tennessee, right?
He did. No, I think he did? He was hurt. I think he played 22 games the last 2 seasons, but yeah, he said that he was in control. He's calling the plays, and that's something. I mean, this is just an old school baller, man, from high school at Whitten Woods, Cincinnati, to West Virginia, to the NFL. It killed him when he wasn't out there. That first year at West Virginia, he is just lighting up the offense on the scout team. I mean, every day. You can't tackle somebody to the ground, but
didn't his defensive coordinator say he made a play every day at least, right? One play every day. Yeah.
Yep. And, it's kind of like Rudy if Rudy was talented. He's giving that kind of effort and pissing everybody off. And then he had the same deal at Tennessee. Like the first year, he's barely playing. And I think it just ate at him to his core. Like he needs to be out there. He wants the responsibility. There's no hesitation. Even his play style, right? That was a scary concussion against Philadelphia on Sunday Night Football when he just bashed into his own teammate. Even through stuff like that, like he really believes anything that happens out on the field was meant to be. Like that he's playing for a bigger purpose, a bigger reason. I know his faith has grown exponentially, and you watch the way he plays. I mean, it is downhill, jumping gaps. Like Gibson said, he's not necessarily shown his players at NC State now David Long film because not everybody can play this way. A relentless passion is what he brings to the field, and I think it's going to be a great fit for this defense. I know I was bullish on Miami at times these past 2 seasons, especially Tua, but this strikes me as a team we're not talking nearly enough about. I think that maybe there's fatigue from a national audience, right? We've seen it in January with this team and this quarterback, but I feel like we're kind of forgetting that their defense was, deteriorated to the studs. Like they barely had much at all out there.
Yeah.
And offensively, not pretty, but they had injuries there too.
Yeah.
And
big names too.
Hell, a play here or a play there, you're hosting a playoff game. I know we're kind of getting off the rails here, Reza, but like I don't know. I think Miami is in position
we win that
to
Tennessee
take that
game
leap still.
Funny, we're talking about a player who was in Tennessee. If we win that Tennessee game, again, going back to Fangio, listen, people want to sit here and blame Tua because we were up by 2 scores with 3 minutes left. You have Vic Fangio and those players on defense. That should be over. There should not be any chance of that team coming back. And if you go back and we won that game and then we finish off Dallas the way we did anyways on Christmas, we host a playoff game. And I remember when we lost that Tennessee game, I said, if things don't work out for us, this is the game we're going to look back and point to. And sure enough, but here's the deal. You know what? Hosting a game or not, no one was beating Kansas City last year. I mean, that was clearly evident because no one did. I mean, the MVP and the Baltimore Ravens at home didn't have to deal with 27-mile-per-hour winds, didn't have to deal with almost minus 30 wind chills, and they put up 3 more points than we did against the Kansas City Chiefs. I just think, Josh Allen and the Bills gave them their best run for the money, and I just don't think anyone was beating the Kansas City Chiefs last year, no matter who you were. So it is what it is, or what the situation was. It is what it is. Let me ask you this, pivot off. We'll get back to David Long in a sec. You said you're bullish on Tua. What are your thoughts on Tua and the whole contract situation?
I'm just fascinated by it from as a storyteller, right? As a objective media member here, like looking at all sides of the debate, because I mean, we talked about it 2 years ago with our Tua Time series. I mean, what Mike McDaniel did with this quarterback on like the mental level is unparalleled. I've never really seen it in recent years where a quarterback who's so broken mentally, who said himself, like, I'm looking in the mirror, like, do I suck? Like he just lost it. I mean, what Brian Flores did to him was awful. I mean, that Titans game, speaking of the Titans, like in that locker room, I mean, they went at it. Yeah. We reported all those details, but this was a quarterback who just seemed destined to be a bust that was just fresh off the collegiate career he had at Alabama, aside from all the injuries. So for Mike McDaniel to show him, 700 plays of success and to rebuild that confidence and to get him thinking like he is the best quarterback in the NFL, to get him Tyreek Hill, they've got Jalen Waddle, to build this offense around his superpower, the anticipatory throws, throwing in rhythm, making the quick reads. It's all true. It's all amazing. And he does have an ability that not many quarterbacks have, that ability to hit that receiver in stride when he can just retrieve that baton and keep moving. And he can throw it downfield, right? It's not like he's dinking and dunking. That's such a misconception. He can push the ball downfield. At the same time, you look at the AFC and where these teams play: Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Kansas City. I mean, the Jets aren't going to be any good with Aaron Rodgers, right? That's a take.
Yeah.
I'll stand
It's
on
a take.
Cleveland.
I share. Don't worry.
Outdoor venues, awful weather, wind and snow, and absolute garbage conditions are inevitable unless you plan on just being the number 1 seed all of the time and forcing teams to go to Miami. And I'm not going to sit here and say Tua will always be terrible in the cold. He came here to Western New York a couple years ago and played a damn good football game like that. Yeah, he played well enough for about 3.5 quarters to win that game. So he can do it. It's in him. But for the most part, he has struggled in these conditions. So if you're the Dolphins and, athletes first is wanting 56, 57 million a year, I can see the hesitation. I can see Mike McDaniel as this quarterback guy, this offensive genius, part of him at least thinking, man, I'm just going to throw a name out there, Dak Prescott, and say he's available next year. Like, what could he do in this offense? What could a draft pick that I love do in this offense? Like, you don't really have many options And that's Tua's case. All right. You want another quarterback? You want to go a different direction? Good luck. So I get it. I get the hesitation from Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, but they're gonna agree to a contract. It's gonna be high. It's gonna be, I would just be shooting from the hip. So I don't even want to throw a number out there, but I think that Tua and his reps, they're gonna win this negotiation, because at the end of the day, if you're the Miami Dolphins, are you really going to just hurl yourself into the quarterback abyss, the purgatory
again,
especially when you've been going for
20 years?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Where you've been for 20 years, and also the state of the team. I mean, look at the contracts around the position. You've gone for it with Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Ramsey. Maybe they paid David Long. Like you're trying to win it right now, as you should. Yeah. So you have to pay Tua. You have to do it. And you have a ton of money tied up into 2 or 3 players. It's not ideal, but I don't think they have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, the guy you asked him to stay healthy last year and last offseason. He stayed healthy and he led the league in passing. So, I mean, it's only going to get better now that you've added OBJ, Jonnu Smith, and you drafted Jalen Wright. I think the issue, what lies
Jalen
here.
Wright. Yeah, there's a guy.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. He was one of my man. Back-to-back years, the Dolphins have drafted my running back man crushes. I was talking about Devon Achane a year before we drafted him, saying this is the perfect fit for us. Boom, we draft him. This season, heading into the draft, my draft crush at that position was Jalen Wright, and they traded up for him. It's the first time Chris Greer's ever traded up to select a running back. So, and I think that's another key reason. You're talking about winning in January, December. Raheem Mostert hasn't been healthy the last 2 years when we got into those months. Devon Achane was dealing with injury for the first time in his career last year during those months, turf toe and stuff like that. And I think now they're just by committee, hey, one of these guys is going to be healthy come December, and we'll lean on them. And Jalen Wright's built to be a little bit of a workhorse, you know what I mean, who can get off the edge real quick. But yeah, with Tua and him getting paid, I kind of think, I don't know, man. Listen, do I think at the start of the offseason, I didn't think he should reset the market, but this market's getting crazy. All right. When Goff got paid, I would have got in that meeting room with Tua and his agents that I want to hammer something out. As soon as I heard the Cons were willing to pay Trevor Lawrence $50+ million, I knew we were going to run into problems, because Trevor Lawrence, listen, I think Tua is a top 8 quarterback. I think Trevor Lawrence is like a top 12 quarterback. So I think Tua is better. And now you got Jordan Love coming up, right? And hey, listen, you can find the receipts. When I started off in YouTube in October 2019, my whole stick was you either stick at 5 and you draft Tua, or you draft Jordan Love with 18 or 26, because I was a huge Jordan Love fan. From what I saw at Utah, I think his last year at Utah, he kind of got the shaft when they had 10 new starters across offense, and it was clearly an issue. You know what I mean? So you just look at the intangibles, you look at the tools of Jordan Love, you're like, man, if a coach can polish that, this kid's going to be freaking good. So I'm a huge Jordan Love fan, but he's probably coming for Lawrence's money. Then you got the guy you named, Dak. If you're going to pay Dak $60 million, why don't you just pay Tua 56? Like, that's where I'm at with it. Like, all I got to say is last Christmas, it was win and get in for the Cowboys and the Dolphins. Which quarterback led their team on a last-minute winning drive to win the game? Tua Tagovailoa. So, I mean, what are we doing, right? So, yeah, that's my whole thing. If you're going to pay Dak and your whole issue is Tua can't win, what's Dak's issue?
I think you nailed the crux of the debate when you were saying why you're not high on Trevor Lawrence, and you referenced him as a top 12 quarterback.
Yeah.
If you're a quarterback in that top 12, you are going to reset the market.
Yeah.
That's just, hey, I'm a very capitalistic fella, especially as somebody who is running his own business.
Yeah.
I'm all about it. Hey, Tua put it perfectly. The market is the market.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, you want to try a plan B as a franchise? Be my guest. Look at the Atlanta Falcons last season, and guilty as charged. I think I was wrong on last year. I'm like, I love it. They're thinking outside of the box.
Yeah, I thought
All
they'd
these
win the
teams-
division. Mhm.
Right. I mean, at that, for the most part, teams this generation have either thought we have to suck to get a top pick and get a quarterback that
Yeah.
way, or we talk ourselves into the guy we have and we give him a crazy amount of money and there's no in between. The Falcons were like, okay, let's try to find that in between. Let's try to build a team of monsters offensively around Desmond Ridder, a 3rd-round pick,
Yeah.
Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Arthur Smith at the controls. Let's, this powerhouse of an offensive line, Chris Lindstrom, richest guard in NFL history with that extension. And what happened? Desmond Ridder directly cost them 3 games with 3 boneheaded mistakes. Those 3 mistakes don't happen. They win the division, and they're talking themselves into that blueprint working. I think teams around the NFL are looking at that like, yeah, no thanks. No thanks. If we've got Trevor Lawrence, we believe in Trevor Lawrence. Oh, by the way, we were 8-3, and Christian Kirk tears his groin Monday Night Football, the first play of the game, and everything falls apart. You can talk yourself quickly into Trevor Lawrence being a franchise quarterback worth that much if you're the Jaguars. Jordan Love, same deal in Green Bay. The best quarterback in the NFL from mid-November on. So I think if the Dolphins, they can look at it that Tua led the NFL in passing. You pay him, and you figure out a way to win games because, yeah, good luck if Mike White or Skylar Thompson is your quarterback.
You want to know what my argument is if I'm athletes first? You know where I'm starting at with the Trevor Lawrence and Tua thing? I'll tell you this one because you probably haven't heard this because I think I'm the only platform that makes this argument. And listen to how right this one is. Okay, so you've been around Lynn Bowden Jr. You remember? You wrote the article and everything like that. Okay, let's go back.
How could I forget?
Okay, so Tua Tagovailoa has elevated guys like Lynn Bowden Jr. There were people in this fan base who were arguing with me that he'd put up more yards than Albert Wilson Jr. Mike Gesicki. What has Mike Gesicki done since he left the Miami Dolphins? There were people in this fan base because of the yardage Mike Gesicki would put out because Devontae Parker would get injured, Preston Williams would get injured, Tua would lean on him. There were people saying we need to pay Mike Gesicki $10+ million a year, okay, in this fan base, all right? Malcolm Perry, I don't know if you remember Malcolm Perry, the Navy 7th rounder who was like a gadget quarterback receiver that we brought in. My whole point is Tua has worked with and elevated guys who are now flipping burgers somewhere. Well, and look at Tyreek. Tyreek's having the best years of his career with Tua Tagovailoa. All the while, Jalen Waddle's still eating and getting his when he's not injured. Trevor Lawrence. Why does Calvin Ridley not look like the same guy he was with Matt Ryan? You gave all that money to Christian Kirk, and you brought in Zay Jones. You threw away James Robinson, who had the best ever single season for a rookie UDFA running back. You threw that away to draft Travis Etienne. So my whole point is Tua, there's a history of him elevating players. I can't find that history of Trevor Lawrence elevating players, and he just reset the market on an annual average.
I do like Trevor Lawrence. You're not going to get anti-Trevor rhetoric out of me. I think that
I'll tell you this much: Trevor Lawrence has been on a
that arm.
Been on a downward trajectory since his freshman season in Clemson. And you can go back. The person I blame for where he's at right now, it's not Urban Meyer. It's Clemson and Dabo Swinney. They're not worried about developing quarterbacks. They put the best athlete out there. They say, we don't have time to develop you. You got to go win because we're a major program. We don't have time to go through the peaks and valleys of some guy learning the position. And I can make the argument he's, in college, he went, and I don't know, man. People get way too hyped on the 6'5", blonde hair, blue-eyed. It's the same thing with Herbert. It's the same thing with Herbert. It's the exact same thing with Herbert. All the tools in the box, but Herbert's probably arguably the biggest choke artist in the NFL right now for a top 10 quarterback.
Grew his hair out, right?
Maybe that's why. But I don't. You know what? Like we are in a era where when Lamar Jackson entered, they tried to tell us the pocket quarterback is dying. That's the new breed of quarterback. Yet, I'm looking at Jared Goff. I'm looking at Brock Purdy. I'm looking at Tua Tagovailoa, and the pocket quarterback is alive and very well. And, it is what it is. I don't know, man. I think we're getting sold too much on traits with guys like Herbert and Lawrence, when there's guys who have elite intangibles like processing, anticipation, et cetera, where right now they're having more success like Brock Purdy and, Tua Tagovailoa. Have Trevor Lawrence or Herbert ever led the league in passing? And it's not like they haven't had weapons. Can't say they haven't had weapons, right? So I don't know. Anyways, that's a whole different rabbit hole. You can tell that I'm passionate about.
Can I like both of them? I like both of them.
Yeah, I think guys are really overrated. But back to David Long for a second here. When he was talking about, you mentioned all the trauma he's been through, from the aunt to the SWAT team to, the cousins, which was, bro, I got to say, one of the craziest parts of that piece was you had a cousin killing another cousin. What was that? I don't remember. Did you find out? Like, what was the reasoning behind that? Like,
the details to why I couldn't iron out. It would be hearsay for me to speak out on it. But yeah, it was one cousin killing another cousin. Their moms were sisters, which created all sorts of drama. Doesn't even do it justice. Trauma within this family dynamic. But yeah, these weren't just like random cousins to David Long. The one, Curtis Boston, Apple App, he called him. This is somebody that he was incredibly close with as a kid. And then when he gets to college, that scout team year that I referenced at West Virginia, he's losing his mind because he wants to play in the games, and he's just beating the hell out of people at practice. That was who he called. That was who he talked to often. And this person kept him hungry, sane, all of that. And that's horrific. They didn't even solve that case until 2023. So like 5 years after his death, they figured out who did it, but his body was found charred in a fire.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Just unspeakable stuff. But yeah, number one, that moment that really could have broken David Long Jr. for good. I cannot imagine how he processed it all was, Keith DeWitt, who a big reason he was in prison as long as he was, is his dad was a kingpin in Dayton.
Yeah, cocaine trafficker, right?
Right, cocaine trafficker. And so that name certainly doesn't help. But he's in prison for most of a 15-year stretch. Part of an aggravated robbery, but the details kind of hazy. Wasn't really as much at fault as his brother for the one robbery. Gets out, and he's on probation. A gun is found under his car when he gets stopped. It's not even his gun, but he shouldn't be around it. Goes back to prison, gets into a fight with the CO, which who knows why that happens. But that extended it 7 years. So for most of 15 years, he's in prison. He gets out in COVID, March 2020. He's got a bag over his shoulder on a video that he sends to David. He says, I got all the toilet paper right here. I hear you guys are out. Remember, that was when everybody's freaking out, running to the grocery stores for toilet paper and everything. So he's like, David Long is thinking, man, thank God Keith is Keith. And he didn't get institutionalized. He didn't change after all these years in prison. So he can't wait to build a life with his brother that he never had growing up, really. So they do the best they can through COVID, because not only do you have the governmental restrictions, which looking back, let's just say they were a little extreme with what we know now. You've got the NFL. The NFL had stringent restrictions on all of these guys, who they could be around, when they could be around him. So he barely saw Keith at all that 2020 year. And then, yes, that weekend, first week in November, he's in Atlanta visiting his mom, Keith is, and like I referenced earlier, is kind of baited back to this apartment and is executed. David hasn't seen the video. A neighbor's camera caught the footage. David can't see it. The only person who's seen the video in full is their mom, Deanne Joyce, who's just a saint.
Closure, right? She said she needed it for closure, right? Basically.
Yeah. And she said she's really glad her sons haven't seen it. It's as ugly as one can imagine.
His other brother's out, married with a kid now too, right? If I remember correctly.
Right. Yeah. Yep. DeAndre DeWitt he was released less than a year before Keith.
So do they have a good relationship now? Do they have a good relationship?
Yeah.
Super close. Yep. And his father, a little bit here. His father took a took a bomb from the Bronx Bomber, Deontay Wilder. Did you like, and then what happened? Like, he was United a boxing career with 12-5-1, and then he just got caught up in street life. Is that basically what happened? Just got caught up pushing weight? Like, that's just basically what went down?
I linked to that fight, by the way, in 2011. It was in Cincinnati. The Bronze Bomber. I'm actually a big boxing fan. Total coincidence, but that's the boxing mitt behind me right there. I won in a silent auction. DeAndre
Nice.
Wilder. But yeah, this was when Wilder's coming up, and I don't know how many boxing fans are out there, but he just knocks dudes out, right? He just knocks one of the hardest punches in the history. He couldn't do much else, but man, he gets that punch, you're down, unless you're Tyson Fury, then you're getting back up because he's a badass. So he catches Wilder right when Wilder's coming up. David Long Sr.'s coming down. It was kind of a money grab. His son admitted he's really mad his dad even took the fight. He can't watch the video himself. I linked to it in the story. People should definitely watch it. Like, find that part in the story, click the link, because holy hell. I mean, the guy, he just falls over like an oak tree, and he is just in the fetal position in the corner of the ring for a scary amount of time. It's crazy he got back up from that. But yeah, that was something I kind of researched, like, before I headed down to Florida. He got caught up into drugs himself somewhat recently, a few years back, and he's in prison for his involvement in selling. I think they're hopeful that he'll be out within a year. We'll see. But it's just like another thing. Like David Jr. said, what he's kind of learned over time is, like, the shit is bound to happen in his family. Something is bound to go very, very wrong. Whether it's that another cousin was murdered on New Year's Day, of this year, 2024. And even Keith, the cemetery in Dayton, they buried him in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
Like, they were embroiled in this court case with the cemetery in Dayton. So he's learning, like, this is all going to happen.
And he didn't have a headstone, right?
He respond to it.
He didn't even have a headstone, right?
He didn't.
Have they got that sorted out though since?
I think that they're finally just now getting it sorted out. And to Mike Vrabel's credit, if I remember correctly, I think, he actually kind of helped the family in Ohio, because he knows people in Ohio, kind of pointed them in the right direction. So
Good.
Vrabel shouldn't be the complete villain in the story. But still, yeah, probably shouldn't have said that ahead of free agency.
One thing that was mentioned, and by his DC at West Virginia, and also his roommate, the safety, was his unbelievable work ethic. You can't make it to the NFL level without a crazy work ethic. You can't become a leader in the NFL without a crazy work ethic. What did you take away from when people talked about how hard he works?
Yeah, I'm going to pull up the exact quote here. I thought that he put it perfect. David Long Jr., he's got, at a young age, so very young age, growing up in Dayton and Cincinnati, kind of going back and forth. He's got brothers locked up. His dad has, quote, 4 or 5 baby mamas. There's a reason there's a lot of cousins. He's one of 12 children, by the way. He said, quote, "I see something effed up and I just don't do it. A lot of people make it hard. It ain't." Isn't that true? Like, what a great quote. Put that on a shirt. Like, it's not that hard to figure out right from wrong in his mind. So he was never tempted to make the mistakes that everybody around him was making. I mean, he just fell in love with football at a young age in a hamburger drill, Pop Warner Dayton, where you're on your back head to head with something. You get up and you just smash into each other. He killed a dude, and he just loved football. And he always knew from that point forward, this is what I want to do with my life. I'm going to pursue this dream, get a college scholarship, be a shining light in my family to maybe inspire them to live them out of this situation somehow. And a lot of guys are like that in the NFL. I think that's the beauty of the NFL. You have so many of these players from so many rough neighborhoods across the country. I've sat down with Damar Hamlin talking about this all in McKees Rocks, where he's from. Same deal. Like, you want to be that source of inspiration. It really did mean a lot to David Long. So I think that's what kind of steered him away from drugs and robberies and gangs or whatever the hell he could have gotten into. And at 6 a.m., he would just go to his hill, and I believe it was Forest Hills, wherever. Let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, Forest Park, nearby Cincinnati, 6 a.m., bring his ladder, set it up the incline, and literally work out until he puked. So that's what he did in high school. He said there was nothing any college coach in Morgantown could have done to him, put him through that topped the work he did in high school. This guy's a maniac. I mean, and really it's derived from that anger, derived from that trauma, and he's just found a way to harness it at the linebacker position, which has led him to the NFL. And I think he does stay in Miami. We'll see what they offer him. I think he loves it there. I think he wants to stay there because mentally this is as great of a place as David Long Jr. has ever been in. He loves living there.
Was there any reasoning behind his number change?
That's a good question. I should have. It was his college number, right? So I think maybe bringing it back to the college days is part of the reason. Yeah, not sure if there's deeper significance there though.
And he's into crystals, huh?
Yeah, his mom's really holistic, always looking for those holistic remedies. So yeah, he's trying to use every part of his brain that he can, which is so admirable. I was kind of joking, like, back when I was a single guy, I'm married and I got a 5-year-old and a soon to be 3-year-old. And we were talking, I mean, I know you got to pick your kids up at school. Like every day is a game of Tetris. Like for us, it's hard to pick up a hobby. At least that's what we tell ourselves. Maybe we should just do it, right? And not sleep. But David is in such a great time of his life he is wanting to push his boundaries and limits and try new things. He had this dream of playing the piano. Right. Yep. Had that dream of playing piano for his wife one day as a kid. And so he's sitting there, starts looking up piano teachers in Fort Lauderdale. Wanted to learn tennis, picked up tennis. Golf, picked up golf. Wants to be a pilot. Met somebody from Italy who's a pilot. He's going to get his license soon.
That's awesome.
I think that's great. Like more men and women at that point of their life, right? Like it's a little harder when you got a family, but if you're a single, and he's in a relationship now, but if you got that time, like don't just sit around, like explore, like push yourself into uncomfortable, just hobbies that you wouldn't otherwise pick up.
Yeah. And I also noticed in your article, he went on that, was it the Dolphins Challenge Cancer bike ride with Zach Thomas, right? So I think Dolphin fans would like if he formulates a relationship with the best linebacker in franchise history. That would be something, you know what I mean? So, I mean, it couldn't be a better mentor. It wouldn't be a better mentor for a guy like that,
Yeah, he rode all 54 miles with Zach Thomas for that event, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I'm not sure how close they are. I reached out to Zach Thomas actually for this. He was a little busy, couldn't carve out time, but I'm sure they got some type of relationship. I mean, that just seems to be something that David would want to kind of build on.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and listen, tell the people where they can find you. Tell the people what you got going on, and anything, because I mean, now, I mean, you've written some pretty big pieces over the last couple of years, and some of them have been centered around the Dolphins, right? The Tua time one, Lynn Bowden Jr. was a Dolphin when your article came out, though. The thing that I remember the most about that article is you revealing that he was on speakerphone with Raiders management. I'll never forget that part of the piece. That was crazy.
That's right.
Yeah. Tell everybody what you got going on, where they can find you, your socials and everything like that.
I always appreciate you having me, Reason. Let's do it again soon. And Miami Dolphins fans, readers are always so unbelievably supportive. When I put out a story like this, I can always count on the Dolphin fans finding it, which is awesome. It makes it worth doing, honestly. But yeah, golongtd.com. I've got the story pinned right there on the homepage, and it's open. It's unlocked, so everybody can read it. It's close to 10,000 words, so maybe carve out a little time if you'd like. But that's always the goal here. We're all kind of living these fast-paced lives and scrolling, and everything's in bite-sized form. So I just want to try to provide an outlet for folks that maybe want to hit pause on that craziness, learn something, read something, follow a player's journey like David Long Jr. And thankfully people want to do that because I think I launched in November of 2020, still going strong. So completely independent, by the way, no ads, no sponsors, no corporate overlords of any kind. It's just me. So if you want to subscribe, that would be incredible. It's just $8 a month, $50 a year to get everything. There's some stories I put out like that McDermott problem series That's just for subscribers. I believe the Tua time was as well.
Yeah, it was.
So definitely appreciate everybody who wants to subscribe, support, feed our kids downstairs watching Bluey right now. They appreciate it. And we'll get back to those Dolphins as much as possible. I'm trying to think back to last year. I did a Zach Sealer profile, which was really interesting. That guy is cut from the go long cloth. It was hilarious because I just did a podcast with Wyatt Teller, and I told Wyatt, like, if I were to create a silhouette emblem for everything go long, it's you kicking somebody's ass. Like, he is just a riot to talk to. And then lo and behold, Wyatt Teller and Zach Sealer are like really good friends. It doesn't surprise me one bit.
Really, eh? That's awesome.
So yeah, we'll definitely keep checking in on those Dolphins. And hey, if you're just a football fan who wants to read some long form, I think you'll enjoy it as well.
Yeah, long form, great content too. So, man, I appreciate you for coming on. Thanks as always. And guys, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and we'll catch you on the next one. Until then, as always, fins up all day, every day.
Let's go!